Good morning, folks. Nice to see you. Morning, Mel. Hope you're okay. That's good to hear. Good to read, actually, Mel. Keep your chin up, mate. Hope it's all going okay. Hope your recovery is very quick and you get back to good health very soon. Morning, Mel. You okay? Thanks for your question this week. I'll cover that a bit today, hopefully. When did I see you last then, Mel? Was that down in Southampton last year? Hi, Simon. Good morning. Good morning, Ian. Time for more physics. Simon, I couldn't open your text message that you sent me. It wouldn't let me, with my telephone number and the password, get into it. Perhaps you could email it to me. Always time for physics, Ian. I thought Meon Valley, maybe. Melvin. Good morning, Robert. Thanks for joining in. I wasn't at Aldershot, Melvin. No. Morning, George. Nice to see you. Good morning, Don. Hope you're all well. Okay, it's 2 minutes past 9. Good morning, Brian. Oh, Brian. I'll contact you later on. I forgot to contact you yesterday. Many apologies, Brian. Hope you're well. Sorry about that. M, N. Bit cryptic, that, Brian. Yes, it's in the post, Brian. Alrighty, 2 more minutes, then we'll get started. I've got quite a bit of info relative to last week. I've had quite a lot of feedback from last week. So we're going to start with the feedback from last week, right about the club face and Tiger's amazing video. Alrighty, 4 minutes past, 1 more minute, and then we'll get started. Thanks, Sam. Morning, Mrs. Sykes. All right, folks, I make it 9:05. So we'll get started. Thanks ever so much for joining me. I hope you're all keeping fit and healthy and managed to get through the lockdown. Right, so what a conversation starter that was with the Tiger Woods video last week. And I've had lots of emails from people who've watched it live and people who watched it subsequently, either asking for refunds because I told them to close the face to perfect a draw, and I'll talk about my refund policy later on. Or they've been confused as to why an open face leads to a draw when it's so logical to think of a closed club face, or certainly a square club face, closing to create a draw. So I'm going to go through all that today. I had a great email from one of the members saying, well, look, you told me to close the club face. Is that still applicable, or has the game changed? The game hasn't changed at all, but I'm going to explain why I get you to close the face and then position the body to align for that. So we're going to go into real detail today about club face during the swing and its relationship with the ball, with your swing, and with the target. Those three relationships are linked, but they can all be very different. So let's start off by rerunning that Tiger Woods video, which I know some of you have watched again, but I'll just rerun it for reference point.
It never fails to. I always notice whenever you're going to hit a draw, you always
drop the foot.
No, I'll drop the foot, but then also open the face just a tiny bit.
You got to start right.
It's like 1 degree to the right every time, and then same with a fade. You go opposite.
Slightly close, start left.
It's unbelievable how you do that every time. You don't even really seem to think about it much. You just kind of do it. It never fails to. I always notice whenever you're going to hit a draw, you always
drop the foot.
No, I'll drop the foot, but then also open the face just a tiny bit.
You got to start right.
It's like 1 degree to the right every time.
So, got to start it right. That's his line, isn't it? 1 degree open. So, let's look at that again in quite a bit more detail today. So I had a rehearsal shot earlier. It's not a particularly good drive, but it does illustrate my points really well, quite well. Actually, we're going to get into much more detail today about the relationship that your club face has with the face, with the ball, with the target, and with your swing line. So if we stood in the first tee, you'd see me hit that drive, and like Tiger says, got to start it right. So it started right of target, and then it's banked back to the left of target. So the white line here is our center line, but that ball started right and curved left. And I hit that ball there with a club face, which is open. Remember, anything which has nothing there means a plus. Anything with a minus means left of target. So anything without a symbol here is a plus. So I had the club face there open by 6.6 degrees to my target. So let's think about that. There's a golf ball. Yeah. And I hit it with a club face that was 6.6 degrees open to the target. Now, we would all think that must mean a slice or a push with the ball flying straight right of target. So let's have another look at some more data. Remember, it's a huge draw spin. I've put 39 foot of bend on that ball. 39 foot of bend to the left. So it's a 39-foot draw, but the club face was open by 6.6 degrees. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The club path of my swing was 11 degrees to the right of target, and that's why the ball started right of target. So my face, relative to that path, 11.3 minus 6.7, was actually 4.7 degrees close to the path. So that's relative to the target. The face angle to the target was 6.6 right of target. The face to the path on which I was swinging, 11 degrees right of target, was actually closed by 4.7 degrees. And this is why none of you are getting a refund, because I told you to close the face. So if we look here, what I'm explaining there is that when I've told you in the past, we've had our lessons, I've said, look, turn the face in to close the club face, turn it in. I will then have said to you, now aim to the right of target to allow for that. But what I'm doing with you there is I'm allowing for the club face closing, which will start the ball left of where we're aiming. So therefore, we aim further to the right. So those two positions there balance off to create a ball which starts right of target, because that's where we're pointing. But because I'm actually to close a club face, relative to that path, the ball will bend over, and to you it looks like a draw by someone who aims right of target to achieve a draw. Now, Tiger can aim square to target, left of target, right of target to achieve the same effect. So he can manipulate his swing and his club face during the swing to keep the club face open relative to the ball, but closed relative to the path he is swinging on. That's where the ball comes back to target. So what I'm doing with you when I'm saying close the face and aim right of target, it's the quickest, fastest, simplest method to get you to draw the ball. And it's the same method that I employ myself. I aim right of target and get the ball to curve back. So I understand those ball flight positions there. All I care about is during my swing is if my club face is closed relative to my swing. I then align my body for the shot I want to play. Now, the fixation with starting with the club face square and the body square is something which we should never have taught as golf pros, really, because there's no other reason to aim square unless you're trying to hit a perfectly straight shot. And like I said to you last time, a bullet cannot fly straight from a gun. It barrels and it rolls and it moves. If a machine can't send a bullet on a straight line, we certainly can't send a sphere on a straight line. It's standing to the side of it. And we stand over here, therefore we attack a sphere from an angle. It will not fly straight. It might look like it flies straight when the world's best players hit it, but what they do is they will minimize the amount of curve on the ball. So their club face will be very square to their path, or maybe slightly 1 degree open, 1 degree close to their path, and their path will be 1 or 2 degrees from square, and the ball will fly with a very, very small amount of bend. Trackman will pick it up and it'll give us all the data down to an inch, but with our eye, it could look like it's flying perfectly straight, but it's certainly not. So I talked there about the relationship of the club face to the target, and that's the most logical one we always see. What's the club face doing relative to the target? I then talked about the club face relative to the path we're swinging on. If I'm swinging way right of target, but my path is less, and my club face is less to the right of target, i.e. close to my path that I'm swinging on, that ball will draw, even if at 6.6 degrees, the club face is open relative to the target when I hit the ball. And this is where I get into other debates about what's square in a golf swing. For years, we were taught, and we taught, that when we swing the club back, the club face should be square, pointing up to target here. Now that would only be true if the goal swing took place around the body horizontally. Because I tilt the body forward in a goal swing, then that club face now is square. That surely is open. You see, as I swing around the body here, the club face starts square to the ball here. As I go back, then it would be square because it's still parallel to my spine here. Any manipulation of that club face, i.e. opening it here, to achieve what we used to call square, is now open to the ball. And this is how teaching evolves so much. And I can't remember if I said this to you last time, but I remember being an assistant pro. I just turned professional, and so let's say 1992, 1991. And Dennis Pugh, who's a very famous coach, stood at a conference and said to all these teaching pros at the conference, said, "I'm convinced you can hit a draw with an open face." And it was ridiculed throughout the industry. He said, "I can't explain why. I'm sure you can hit a draw with an open face." And it was like a standing joke in the industry. How can Dennis Pugh teach all these good players and think you can draw a ball with an open face? Now, that's only 20-something years ago. And that's how quickly things have evolved so much with the understanding of science now. So what I'm talking about there is really how I, as a coach, have to teach you to get the ball to shape. And it can be a mucky business sometimes, I've got to tell you. And sometimes we have to use the best methods we can to get the ball to finish on target. Now, if that means that you close that face and you point right at target, you don't need to know if your club face is open or closed at impact, because that will affect that shape on the ball. It will create a draw spin. That's all you need to know about. And like I said last time in Don McKenzie's question about seeing the ball and where you look at the ball, it's on the club face for 1/2000th of a second. Now, that's how clever Trackman is, because it's measured my club face at impact there at a point in time which is 1/2000th of 1 second. It was 6.6 degrees up. And that's the benefit of radar, because cameras won't be able to capture that really that well. Alrighty, so let's just look back at the sequence here. Club path. What's the path my club took into and through the ball there? It's way right of target. And that got the ball to have a 39-foot of bend on it. That then created a spin axis of 38.6 degrees. So let's look at that. That would be a spin axis of 0 degrees. Let's call that 45. So let's say that's about 38. That ball was hit so much on the inside path here that it created an axis on the ball where that ball was spinning backwards. So it always spins backwards, but on an axis of 38 degrees. That way, now because I swung so much to the inside with an open face relative to the target, that ball started right at target, but it's that axis that sent the ball back to the target. So you've heard me talk about Moe Norman. Let me just show you one of my favorite videos on him.
Shot a draw, Moe?
Not that I know of. No, I hope not.
So Moe Norman, as I've talked about before, was either highly autistic or high on the Asperger's spectrum. An incredible talent and a very, very bright man, incredibly bright when you listen to him talk and how accurately he talks. And he's being asked here by one of the great historians of the game and a TV presenter called Peter Kessler. He ran the Golf Channel for years and then sort of dropped off the radar, sadly. And he interviewed all the greats. If you can look up online, Peter Kessler, Kessler, you'll see interviews with all the great players. And he has a real knack of bringing out the naturalness and the honesty of all these players, very relaxed. And he got quite friendly with Moe Norman, as close as people could get to Moe Norman. Anyway, so he's asking Norman here on the range, because Norman would never come to a studio. He didn't like sort of claustrophobic environments. He was always hitting balls on the range, hit thousands of balls a day. It's what he buried himself in. He's now asking Moe Norman about, is a draw, you don't quite capture it on the start of this video. It says, is the draw the perfect shot? Moe Norman then says, no, it's not. You'll see that. But it's the bit at the end that I want you to focus on here.
Natural shot of draw, Mo.
Not that I know of. No, I hope not. Just all I believe is straight. That's what I was always taught. Always keep your toes ahead of your heels when you're walking down the fairway. You can't go wrong. Don't get the army song going. And I swing my arms and hands that way. That the face is never. It's always dead square. Understand one thing, the ball goes where your hands go. It's that simple.
Does the rest of the body respond to the directions that the hands give them?
Yes. I should say so. See? Sure. This game's so simple. Simplest game in the world, right here.
Why do the rest of us have so much trouble then?
Don't know what they got. Don't know what the swing consists of. Don't know what it means with these two dumb things. Look, they got no feelings. Look, they don't know they just hit the ground. But these things make them more dumb.
Do we overthink or do we overwork?
Both.
And I love that video, and I watch several of the Moe Norman videos. It's so entertaining. But what the point he's making there is very disputable now about the club face being square. He didn't have the benefit of Trackman, didn't have the benefit of what we talk about in the swing, didn't have the benefit of all the measurement. And he honestly believed he hit every shot with a square face. Now, super fast cameras now can capture that swing there, and he was pretty square most of the time. And he believed his club face traveled down the target line for a very long period of time. It wasn't that long compared to other people, but that's what he played with. Now, if you take Lee Trevino, Tiger Woods, Ben Hogan, you're traveling there over a 60-year period of the world's great players. They all said that Moe Norman had the best swing and the best repeatable motion. But he's the only person who's ever done what he's done, the way he swung it and how he contacted the ball with that square face all the time. So back on planet Earth for golfers like us, we have to manipulate the club face and the ball because we can't send it straight all the time. And there's 2 or 3 stories about him which may well be apocryphal, or they may well have a germ of truth in them. One of which is that he came to a very famous hole in the Canadian Open. He won the Canadian Open like 7 times or something. And he came to a famous hole and stood on the tee, and everyone was hitting a mid-iron or a long iron to lay up short of a brook cutting across the fairway. And he pulled out his driver, and someone said, "Oh, Mo, don't forget there's a brook there." He said, "No, I'm going to hit it over the bridge." And he hit his shot, and it went over the bridge in the middle of the fairway. Just whatever that would be, 6-8 foot wide of target. This was in a practice round, and everyone laughed and said, "I bet you can't do that again." And he hit it 3 more times. Now, I'm not sure I believe all these stories, but there must be some truth in that as well. He also played for 2 seasons with the same tee peg. His ball quality strike was so pure that he would clip the ball on the ascent, therefore missing the tee peg with the driver, clip it off the top. Again, you'll never see Moe Norman take a divot. Remember I talked last time about, 2 times ago, how I talked about the strike of the ball coming down, the low point being after the ball. His low point was very, very square to the ball. So when he hit the ball, it was square and then ascending after the ball. And so he used the same tee peg with his driver for 1 or 2 seasons because he was clipping the ball so purely that the tee peg never got broken. Now, let's go back to that point now I just said about the square strike. If your club face is perfectly square at impact, and Moe Norman, who thought he was swinging perfectly square down to the ball here, there should really be no contact with the ground, or no great contact with the ground, certainly no divot, because the club is swinging on such a pure arc right where it meets the ball. So it makes contact with the ball, club gets underneath the ball, and then the ball jumps off of that relative to its face angle, its left angle here, and then swings on the ascent. So he was a great clipper of the ground. And really, like I said to you before, the great strikers, Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Moe Norman, weren't particularly big divot takers because their swing line was so flat to the ground. Their arc was so wide. The great photo of Trevino stretching out here is telling you how wide his arc was to the ball. So he's not going to take much of a divot there. So I then talked about I want to talk now about the sequence of the aim in the swing and the sequence of the club face in the swing. Most of my lessons will take place with me saying to you, point a little further right of target. That will then encourage a swing, which is coming from the inside path here. And many of you who've been in here, I'll say, oh, look, try and hit a ball for me into this side of the net, please. So the swing then is coming from the inside, hitting the ball out here. I'll then manipulate your hand position. I'll say, okay, let's get that glove hand over a bit more. I'll pull that glove hand over a bit more here this way. And that will help the club face close relative to the path. And so really, when we talk about the golf swing, we should talk about the club face relative to the path all the time, relative to where we're aiming, not relative to the target. That's a byproduct then in the end. Now, in Simon Dixon's case, who's watching, we've done that too much on occasion, had that left hand over a bit too much, and of course that closes the club face way too much, it sends the ball too low. And so there is a limit to how much we do all these things. When I've talked to you in the past about absolutes and variables, the glove hand position is definitely a moving feast for most people. Alrighty, do we have any questions on what I've just talked about there? I'll give you a couple of minutes if there are any questions about that point. Or those points, I beg your pardon. I'll give you 60 seconds there. Foot position. So let's take a ball here. There are two very distinct views on ball position. I'm just so every shot I'm trying to hit, and you can see it in the Moe Norman video, the butt of the club points into my left hip socket here. So that's my starting position there. Club shaft aligned with the left arm, butt of the club, left hip socket. For a driver, the club still points into the left hip socket here, but the club is forward. For a wedge, club's still into left hip socket, but I'm in a smaller position. Now, my ball is there. If I put the ball back in my stance, that has a natural inclination for everything to point right of target. Now, we don't want the feet, hips, and shoulders to be misaligned. So if I put the ball back in my stance here, aiming slightly right of target makes a bit of sense there. So if you see people hit the ball from the back stance here, you think, well, everything should align over here. But relative to the angle that we attack the ball here, what I do with you is I say, listen, just don't worry about anything, just swing on that path there, keep hitting from the inside, and we know the ball spins back. A lot of good players will open their stance, because that then realigns them to the target. The ball starts way right of target, and then comes back in. So there's lots of quirky ways of looking at the stance and the foot position here. When we watched the Tiger Woods video, he said he withdraws his right foot a little bit when he wants to do a bit of a draw. He's also talked about in the past how he actually puts his left foot forwards to hit more of a fade. So again, the stance is very much a variable. There's such a moving feast there. You can position the feet in whatever position you want to relative to the shot you're trying to hit. The single most important thing is that the balance of the feet and the weight distribution and the positioning of how you stand supports the swing. If you were swinging in leather-soled shoes on a very slippy surface or an icy surface, it doesn't really matter where you point, because as you swing, the force of the body movement is going to spin you out of control. So really, if you look at what the parts of the body are, the foot position is to provide a support and a base for the motion you're about to make in your swing. Your knees provide the spring and the life, because I want to remember, pull that one back and pull that one back. So I need life in my knees. You can't swing if your knees are locked out here. The hips, I don't really talk about very much, because I'm talking more about the trunk of the body and the leg action here. The hips just sit in the middle of those. There's not a lot of range in your hip motion anyway. You know, the real motion of a golf swing comes from these big muscles here and this side of the body here going around. The shoulder alignment is actually key, because that is what swings your hand and arm position. Now, if you look at most good players, they'll either have their arms in front of them here like this, or the right elbow tucked in slightly here to allow for a fold. So my shoulders will be aligned to where I want the ball to start. My forearms, likewise, but my feet can position how they want to create the shot I'm trying to create. Is it harder to hit a draw with an upright swing path? So, you're a lefty in, so I'll come around here. The answer is yes. As we swing the club upright up here, the club is less on the inside of the ball, but it's still on the inside. The most vertical upswing up here is still on the inside of the golf ball. As I set myself up here, if I swing extremely upright, that club is still somewhere between me and the ball. Now, if I take a look at a very, very upright swing here for you. That's Matt Wolf, who's one of the hot players at the moment, young guy, very quirky looking swing. So let's look at his glove arm, the arm which is straight, his left arm pointing up to the sky there. So he's made a swing angle there, which is very up here. But if you look where his club's pointing, you'll see over here, it's now across the line. And that tells us that across the line position, it tells us the motion he intends to bring the club back to the ball, which is down here. If he swings at the top of the swing and the club shaft is aligned parallel to the target, that tells you you're going to come down quite a neutral line here and hit quite a neutral shot, just slightly from the inside. Relative to the club face position will tell you where the ball goes. I'll just explain that again in case you didn't quite capture it, because I was a long way away. In the video, so in the picture, let me get it out of the light. There we go. So his left arm is very high. You see that? But look where the club shaft is pointing. It's not pointing towards the target. Now, if you then look down at the divots, you'll see there's a couple of different angles to those divots there. So what I'm saying there is when he swings very upright with his body and his arms, and the club's up here, his club shaft is pointing way across the line. And that tells you that whilst he's swung the club very, very upright, that position there is telling us his intended path back into the ball, heavily on the inside, swing direction right of target. He's going to play a draw from there, most likely. Now, this is where we get into the conversation as well about positions and motion. And it's very dangerous looking at still photographs of tour professionals, because that is simply a position. It's not motion. Now that swing there, there's loads of very obvious indicators as to what's happening in that swing. But it's very easy to focus on, wow, he's got his left knees out here. He's got the club very high up here. But the motion in that swing is his right leg has straightened. You see that leg there? His left leg has a huge amount of bend in it. So what does that tell us? It tells us the motion in that swing is that way and that way. So the motion of his body movement there is that way. That side's pulling backwards. This side's pushing forwards as a result. Action, reaction. His arms are lifted up very high, but that club shaft is indicating a big return back to the ball heavily on the inside path. So if I go back to the Trackman data, the indicator there would be that the motion of his swing is going to be swinging that club to the right of target, and he's going to hit that with an open face relative to the target, but his face to path is what really matters, is how close to that path is that going to match. Now, if his club path into the ball is, let's say, +1, his club face will be very similar to that as well. It'll be 0 to +1 as well, to the slight draw spin. Okay, so Mel, can you show the Trackman angles, again clarifying which are measured to the target and which are measured to the swing path? Yeah, no problem. So, the attack angle is a descent or an ascent relative to the target line from this dimension, looking down the line. The face angle is a club face relative to that line, looking face on. And I've talked about this a lot as well in the sessions that we've had. 2 dimensions to the swing, that's face on. And more often than not, when I'm giving you a lesson, I won't typically stand face on to you. I'd more like to stand and have that view there of swinging down the line here. So, the face angle is just where the face angle is pointing as the ball is struck. The club path is a motion. That's a position, and that's a motion. It had 11 degrees of swing out to the right of target. The launch direction over there is relative to the target line. So that started 7.6 degrees. The ball started 7.6 degrees right of target. Launch angle, spin rate, spin axis. Spin axis is relative to the horizontal. The spin axis of the ball, 38 degrees that way, is relative to horizontal. Side total, 39 foot of left. That's relative to the target. Low point relative to the target line here. Face to path ignores the target and just said, look, that swing was 11 degrees over there. And whilst that person was swinging 11 degrees over there, the club face was 4.7 degrees closed to where they were swinging. And ultimately, that's the most important part of it all. Because if you were to truly capture the game, you learn how to swing, position that club in the positions which suit your body best to achieve the best ball flight. And then when you went outside, you'd aim relative, or you'd align your body relative to your ball shape. And this is where slices become more ingrained as slices. They start off with good intentions, aiming at the target. They make a few swings where the club face is open relative to path, or open relative to target, and the ball starts to bend this way. Now, going back to Tiger Woods, remember his club face was only 1 degree open, only 1 degree. Now, he's swinging there on 2 degrees on the inside. That gives him a 1 degree draw. So, most amateur golfers swing the club from the outside, which is death in a golf swing. Hello, slice. They then leave the face open, sends the ball over there to the right of target. They then end up aiming further left on the first tee because they know they're going to slice it. But of course, if they aim so far left, they've now got to swing across the ball, and they've got to leave the face open for it to stand a chance of finding the fairway. So the chronology of a slice is people see a slice and then end up aiming further to the left, or for left-handed golfers, further to the right, to allow for their misaligned shape. The same applies for a draw spin. Once we start achieving the ball, draw spin again, a phrase I shouldn't use, the same applies for a ball which is banking left, moving right to left in the air. If you can achieve the swing, which creates that axis on the ball, then you end up aiming right of target to allow for that. The science and the data and the additions and subtractions aren't really that important to you when you're in the field. And that's why I love the Moe Norman video, where he says that dumb guy talks about the golf ball. He says, just these are stupid, these things. They do only what you tell them to do. Now, whilst we love all the analysis and the data, and Trackman's amazing for doing that, you've got to play the game. And so part of playing the game is to forget all this sort of science. And I must tell you a great story here, just reminded me. Where I was with a former Ryder Cup player at the Seniors European Tour Seniors program that we had here. And he swings technically really, really well. A very modern swing, even though he's in his 60s now. I won't tell you his name. I don't think it's fair. Anyway, so a very, very good swing of the club. Very technically, aesthetically, very pretty and very modern. Now, when I say modern, Gary Player was the first real modern swinger of the club because he kept the club here on the way back, where most players of his era were taking the club here. We now know the fastest way of getting the swing to swing well and square and generate power is have the club head on this side of the hands, not this side of the hands, as we take the club back. And that's why people like Matt Wolf are doing exaggerated versions of this now. Anyway, so he was doing this former Ryder Cup player had a swing which did this, swung it up, came through beautifully. Anyway, so I got chatting to him and I said, really admire your swing. So, oh, thanks. He says, I don't really think about much. I said, well, it's technically, it's very, very sound. There's no quirks in it. He said, no, I don't really think about it. Anyway, I was saying, do you coach at all? He said, no, I hate coaching. He said, to earn extra money now, I do odd jobs around people's houses. I do painting and decorating and gardening. So why don't you coach? He said, I can't. He said, I've really tried it and I just can't do it. I said, I can't get the message across. I said, but you seem to swing so aesthetically correct. He said, I just get on with it and do it. He said, I don't really understand the numbers. He said, I can't abide Trackman. I can't abide taking lessons. I'll take tips off people, so I'll just move this and move that. But so he was blessed with a swing which looked fabulous. And it looked like he spent all his life working on the aesthetics of it, but he simply hadn't. It just was his DNA for a golf swing. So it's a long-winded way of saying to you, really, that yes, Saturday morning, and I brand the Saturday mornings as a deep dive into the science and what have you, they're not going to make or break you as a golfer, and they're not going to sort of make you, a significantly better player. But it's fascinating to actually get into an insight of understanding how the ball, the club, and the body all work, and also what we're working on as professionals and what the tour professionals are working on, and we're sort of stealing all the data from them. Alrighty. So, any more questions about that? I told you it was going to be a deep dive today. I'm going to write into all the detail there. Any more questions about what we've talked about? And like I said, the questions that I get from you in the week are really helpful because they sort of help me understand what you're thinking about. And also they help me to sort of put some content in which is relative to what you're thinking. Let's have a quick look again at those divots there. Now, either he's moved to different targets, which is probable, but the divot which seems to be pointing way out to the right of target looks like it's going to those trees there. And it's a huge, thick divot, maybe one or two divots. So you can see, it never fails to amaze me when I go and watch tour professionals, when you see them on the range. Oftentimes they're doing things which are really quirky. Lots of tour professionals don't have their handles on their clubs on perfectly straight. They have them twisted at angles, so the club face will sit open as a dress. Ben Hogan was very famous for that. Greg Norman's handles were put on upside down. Padraig Harrington's are 45 degrees to square. And so they position their club handle on when they put it on in all sorts of different positions to best align them for what they want to do. And they understand the angles much better than we do, and they just work with them. Alrighty. Well, thank you again for your time. Thanks for tuning in. I thoroughly enjoy the sessions. It's a bit weird being online, having an online lifestyle, I must say, talking to a camera 4 or 5 times a week. But it's good to chat. It's good to talk about these things. And like I say, any information which you send to me during the week is something which I'll use for content. I wish I'd taught you physics. Well, it's very sweet of you, Helen, but the point is really, I'm sort of, as I said to you last time, I love this. Is one of a quote from a book on the history of art by Professor Gombrich, which apparently I got given it, but apparently is one of the great art history books. And he talks about how Mickey Mouse is such a successful interpretation of a mouse because we all believe it's a mouse, but if you actually compared it to an anatomical drawing of a mouse, it's nothing like a mouse. But for all intents and purposes, we believe it's a mouse. Now, my interpretation of physics to you could easily be debated by anybody with, GCSE level physics degree. But I'm trying to talk to you in a way which we all understand, and I've got to be able to sort of communicate that in a way which makes you believe Mickey Mouse is a mouse. So if you believe that the science and the physics is what I'm talking about, then that's the whole point of a lesson. You've got to get the message received from me. But thanks again for your time. Can't wait to see you all again. Hopefully the lockdown is only 4 or 5 weeks away and golf courses get first dibs on being open. And keep rehearsing your swing, keep practicing, keep getting that push on your hand. Oh, you have A-level physics, by the way. Not bad. Very good. Keep a club in your hand, keep practicing, and I look forward to seeing you next Saturday for a deep dive. Tuesdays, ladies. Wednesdays, we're doing swing sequencing, and then Fridays, we're doing the cadet golf as well. So I look forward to seeing you all soon, and keep well. All the best. Oh, thank you, Robert. All the best.